Alongside David Pagnotta and Shane Kelly, I'm Irfaan Gaffar. We call this segment Dirty Data, but we're going to remix a little bit and do it trade deadline edition here on the fourth period and talk about the Vancouver Canucks. Guys, Shane, I'll start with you. The news of the day, Andrei Kuzmenko signs a 2-year extension with the Vancouver Canucks worth $5.5 million a season. What do you make of that deal for him?
Good contract. I don't get the team signing it though. He's a player that we don't have a lot of information on, right? So what you want to do from the team side, you want to reduce your risk. How do you do that? You reduce the term. And from the player side, you want to make sure that you've got enough money so that if this is a flash in the pan, you still got 11 million bucks coming your way over the next couple of years. You could do worse. But if you're the Canucks, I don't understand why you didn't just move this player instead. There's really not a window for you to retool around just moving Bo Horvat, which it sounds like that's kind of what we're down to at this point. Uh, I just don't get it. It's the fourth or fifth contract on this team. JT Miller, OEL, Tyler Myers, where I just don't understand why an 80-point team thinks they're a 95-point team.
Yeah, well, look, your confusion is spread across the league, from people in it to people outside of it. The fan base is scratching their heads too. But you look at this, you look at the dynamics, and you look at okay, well, if we are going to trade Bo Horvat, if we're going to trade Brock Boeser, if we're going to get rid of Luke Shen, if we're going to get rid of at some point, either via trade or a buyout in the summer, Tyler Myers and other pieces, you still have to fill the cupboards in some areas. So the Vancouver Canucks are looking at this going, okay, well, Andrei Kuzmenko fits well, loved in the room, meshes with Elias Pettersson. They've got chemistry. At least let's try to build off of that. So from that mindset, I understand it. I agree with you. I think if you're going to start making major surgery, well, you better start making major surgery across the board. Or if you're there, you got your finger on the pulse. I mean, it's an interesting move, but one I think we all expected. Now it's what happens next.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing, right? And the 2-year deal, this team's not going to be ready to compete for a playoff spot in 2 years. Now, will the major surgery or whatever major surgery that happens over the next little while help them achieve that? And maybe, I just really don't know if you're going to trade that many players. But you mentioned Tyler Myers, obviously a bio candidate, Connor Garland as well. Shane, you mentioned Bo Horvat. Um, what do you think the Canucks are going to do there? They said that they've given him an offer that is fair up until this season. And you look at this season, he's playing like an $8 million guy.
Yeah, the Canucks are between a rock and a hard place on this one a little bit, in my opinion, because you go behind the data and what has he changed from prior years to all of a sudden be scoring at like almost a 50 goal pace? And the answer is very little. Almost across the board, everything is the same. Shots off dangerous passes, shots off the rush, shots off of turnovers. You just go across it. It doesn't look different. There's two things that have changed. He's shooting from about 5 feet closer than he has in prior years, and he's taking a pile more shots, both on the power play and at 5-on-5. So that explains some of it, but there's nothing where I can point to. And it's the same with Kuzmenko, who's shooting 25%. Bo Horvat's shooting double his career average, and there's no reason that I can see in the data to explain it. So if I'm the Canucks, I think you have to hold here because you have to expect that to regress somewhere closer to his career mean.
Yeah, I certainly don't blame them. And Jim Rutherford acknowledging last week that, yeah, we feel we have our best offer on the table based on what he's produced to this point. Is it under the market value of what he's doing this year? Yeah, but I mean, you can't bank on the fact that he's going to continue this pace over the next X amount of years moving forward. So you have to take the sample size of what he's doing this year and couple it with the history of what he's done so far in the league. But there's a ton of interest in this player. And now with Kuzmenko locked in, you've got to imagine that all signs point to him being dealt, and whether that's to a Dallas, the New York Rangers, Carolina, the Vegas Golden Knights. There are other teams that have expressed interest in Bo Horvat, Boston, and so on. Like there are teams that like this player, that would like to make something happen. It's just a matter of how do we get a deal done, and is Vancouver really holding firm on getting an NHL caliber player, young NHL caliber player back as a centerpiece to this deal? You lose a little bit of leverage here after you get Kuzmenko locked in.
I agree. I also think that the Canucks still haven't gotten to the number they're kind of uncomfortable with, but they are willing to get to with Bo Horvat. So that's the interesting one to kind of see. However, I do know that if that number doesn't end with the $56 million as a starting point, Bo ain't looking at it. So let's just see that. Final one for us from the Vancouver Canucks, guys, is Shane, is Brock Boeser, because his name seems to always now for the last few years be in trade rumors. Is this the year, finally, I know he makes a lot of money, where the Canucks are able to do something?
To me, if you're buying on Brock Boeser, you're buying what he's done in prior years. It's kind of the reverse of Bo Horvat, where you look at a lot of the numbers behind the scenes, his expected goals, his possession numbers, his entry preventions. He's actually a very good defensive forward. Those really haven't changed. What has changed this year is he struggled scoring. His lines have struggled scoring, so it's not just him. But it's almost the inverse in the sense that, he's only 25 and you don't develop linearly. You're going to have down years. So I actually, if I'm the Canucks, I don't know that I sell him now because you're selling him in kind of a trough of his value. But if I'm an acquiring team, I'm picking up the phone to call about Besser and not Horvat personally.
Yeah, you could kind of argue that he's a casualty of his surroundings right now based on what the Canucks have been doing this season. And yeah, there are teams that are interested in this player: New Jersey, the Islanders, Minnesota, and so on. Philadelphia. There are teams that like this player that believe that he can get back to that status, to get back to the stature of being a 30-goal guy in a different environment. So you're hoping that you can buy low on this. And, we've talked about this before, and Rutherford mentioned it. He's going to have to take an L on a deal. It's probably going to be the Besser trade, to be perfectly honest with you guys. Wherever he ends up, I think he will revert back to that form and be a better player for it.
All right, guys, thank you very much for this. It's interesting because the Canucks are looking a certain way right now. I know they got pummeled the other night by the Seattle Kraken, but this team, as we head into the trade deadline on March 3rd, can look completely different for the rest of the year.